That's more like it. Practice, practice, practice. You know you're never going to be good at everything, right? I failed with this thing for quite a while. So today, what I'm going to do is read some statements by other philosophers on the subject of happiness. And I'll add a little of my own insights. So, first statement is by Aristotle, who says, happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. I didn't know it was that important. I'm always a little skeptical of a statement that basically says that something is absolutely and only something. The whole aim of human existence. You sure about that? Happiness is a nice thing when it happens. But even just the potential for happiness in the future makes the present circumstances acceptable. I've got some other quotes that are along those lines. I guess if you take it that way, the meaning and purpose of life. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Happiness is the meaning and purpose of life. Is your happiness the meaning of your life? Well, let's examine happiness a little more here. Immanuel Kant provides these rules for happiness. So what do we got? Something to do, someone to love, something to hope for. I like that. It's not saying just one thing. Something to do. It's someone to love, something to hope for. I almost feel more like those are the things that create the sense of meaning and purpose in one's life, rather than necessarily guaranteeing happiness. But here's another quote of his that I like. Morality is not the doctrine of how we make ourselves happy, but of how we make ourselves worthy of happiness. That's nice. Taking a little tangent into morality. Saying you can't feel happiness unless you feel you're worthy of happiness. You sure about that? I don't pretend to know what makes you happy. Although we do find that certain experiences generate happiness in a majority of the population. How about this one? Daniel Dennett. Never heard of him before. But he said, the secret to happiness is find something more important than you are and dedicate your life to it. That sounds a lot like one of my favorite author, thinker, philosopher, Viktor Frankl, who wrote fairly extensively on finding meaning in life. And Daniel's basically saying the same thing that Victor would. Find something more important than you and dedicate your life to it. You sure about that? I don't disagree that people need to find their egos and learn how to separate themselves from it. But to just say to find something more important than you, well, shouldn't you be taking a little bit more of an educated approach to it? There's a lot of hierarchies out there that would love to tell you that they're more important than you and get you to dedicate all your time and money to them. So, buyer beware. Speaking of Viktor Frankl, here's what he's got to say. Not specifically about happiness. Like I said, he was more interested in finding meaning, and well, I'm not sure how much importance he put on happiness. I think that he really kind of felt that happiness comes from feeling that your life has meaning. And so really just getting to the point where you feel like your life has meaning, and then happiness will meet you there. So Viktor says, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. So I'm definitely going on too long in this video, and I'll have to cut it back. But I'll just mention that Viktor lived through World War II, and he spent at least a couple of years in Nazi concentration camps. And what he found by working in the I don't know if you'd call it a hospital at a concentration camp, but he helped with the patients that were unable to work, and either they got well enough to get back and work, or they died. And what Viktor found was that the prisoners who had something that they were looking forward to when the war was over and they were free of their bondage, those were the people who had at least a chance of surviving. The people that lost hope for the future, they didn't make it. And I've always felt that was a really important thing to know. So now you know it too. Go read one of his books. William James has this to say: action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action. That's a good different take on the subject, but you sure about that? We've got that sort of absolutist part in this statement here. There is no happiness without action. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I suppose it depends on how you define action. Staying alive is an action. And we don't know whether people that have passed on are still happy or not. Don't have a way of knowing that, but sounds a little absolutist to me, even though it's a good way of thinking about it anyway. I'll cut him a little slack. Dan Millman here. The journey is what brings us happiness, not the destination. I've heard that same sort of thing in a lot of different ways, inspirational messages. Doesn't mean it's not true. The journey is what brings us happiness. It's what brings us sorrow as well. Listen to the snarky attitude of Victor Cousin here. If ignorance is bliss, there should be more happy people. Well, hope that you have some happiness in your life. Hope that maybe any of those ideas may help you find it more in the future. Space and time.